Forgotten Cinema is getting romantic for our 8th season and just in time for Valentine's Day as we cover the 90s ensemble drama, Beautiful Girls.
We'll then do a complete 180 as we dive into some spy films, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Spy Game.
We'll find out why white men can't jump and whether you should shoot to kill while enjoying a Frankenweenie. Nope, that doesn't make any sense.
You know what else doesn't make sense? This season will also feature our 100th episode of Forgotten Cinema.
Feels like 100 years.
Don't I know it?
Forgotten Cinema. Never stop, never stopping. Yes, that's a hint. Part of the Forgotten Entertainment family.
Hey, it's Andrew Morgan, host of the Nomcast, the Netflix original movie podcast. Each week, we review the biggest Netflix original movies with special guests from the film industry, the music industry, comedians, and of course, our fellow podcasters. Check us out on the web at nomcastpod.com. Follow us on the socials at nomcastpod, and most importantly, listen and subscribe to us wherever you get podcasts. Hit that beat one time.
Hello there. I'm Colleen.
I'm Anders.
And I'm Daniel.
We're three nerds that met through our love of science fiction and fantasy storytelling. Of course, one of our favorites is George Lucas's signature achievement, Star Wars.
And if there's one thing the internet definitely doesn't have enough of, it's nerds talking about Star Wars. So here we are with yet another Star Wars podcast, where every week we journey to a galaxy far, far away and discuss one of the films in the current Star Wars canon.
We'll talk about how our relationship with the franchise has changed over time, how the films build on each other, and form our understanding of the Force. At the end, we'll provide some recommendations for other materials you may enjoy if you also love these stories as much as we do.
This week, we're jumping into the Millennium Falcon and discussing that one that started it all, Episode 4, A New Hope, or Star Wars, if we want to go original. Anders, Daniel, you guys ready to lock those S-foils into attack position?
You know it. Red 3 standing by.
Cut the chatter, Red 3.
No, never. Figs forever.
Let's start the attack run.
All right, let's jump right in here with just a little bit of background on the film itself. Star Wars originally opened on May 25th, 1977, and I didn't realize how many times this thing has actually been in theaters until I started doing some research for this episode. So it was re-released in theaters in 1978, 1979, 1981, which is the first time it got that subtitle, A New Hope, and again in 1982. Then, very famously, it was remastered digitally and re-released in 1997 as the special edition. One of the biggest things that's incredible to me about this movie is how cheaply it was ultimately made. So the original budget was $11 million, which translates to about $46 million in 2019. I mean, could you guys imagine like an Avengers movie being made for $46 million?
Absolutely not.
Not even a little bit. That would be like a laugh in the face situation.
Yeah. So on that $11 million, it made $220 million in its original theatrical run, about $410 million globally, $775 million in total when you combine all of the theatrical releases, which ultimately translates in 2019 to $2.5 billion
My
in
word.
box office money.
Good job, George.
Yeah,
Yeah. When you have a good idea, you have a good idea.
exactly.
It was written and directed by George Lucas. It was also edited by Paul Hirsch, Richard Chew, and Marcia Lucas. And Daniel, you found this really interesting little video doc.
Yeah, it's like a 20-minute documentary, and they talk about how Marcia Lucas, with the rest of the editors, really kind of helped shape the vision. George had the idea, and not to get ahead of ourselves in the movie, but she helped influence the idea of the Death Star coming to the Yavin 4 base. That was something that she brought to the table, and I think that's fascinating.
The idea
she decided to kill off Obi-Wan, too.
Yes.
The idea that wasn't like in the original script is just mind-boggling.
George does best when he works with a team, I think, because he's an idea man. He has great ideas. He was influenced by like Flash Gordon and Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces. So he has great bones to his work, but I think he really needs this kind of team behind him to shape it.
It's true.
Which is why this movie turned out so well.
And he's always willing.
He thrives with the team.
Yeah, and he's always willing to push the envelope in any way he can. I don't think it was the absolute, first example of it, but using a lot of those old dogfight films, basically for what we now know today as previs.
Yeah.
To choreograph some of those fight scenes, just incredible. But again, when I was kind of doing a little bit of research on this and I found all the theatrical releases, I mean, this movie has famously had several quote unquote versions. I didn't realize there are upwards of 10 released versions of this movie floating around out there. Now that includes several of those pretty much include a lot of the times for those theatrical releases, they were updating the audio to be the newest version of the time. So just kind of remastering those, pausing a little bit, making extremely minor tweaks. Then we had the 1997 20th anniversary special editions. What about you? What was the original version that you saw? The first ones that you guys saw?
So the first one I saw was the digitally mastered original. So that was the 95 VHS release. It was like the very last one before they put all the special edition changes in. So I got to see pretty much as close as the theatrical release as you could get back in that day.
That's awesome. Anders, what one did you see?
I'm guessing it was probably that same one. It might have been one from a couple of years earlier. I know I saw it before the special editions came out. I had seen it. I was aware of Star Wars. I liked it a lot. It was really cool. I mean, I was like 6 or 7 at the time. And then when I was like 9, I saw the special editions in theaters. That was my first theatrical experience. And for the purposes of this rewatch, I just did the version that's on Disney Plus, which is the absolute latest one, I believe, unless he's come out with another one in the last like 6 months. It's possible. I love McClunky. McClunky is my favorite word of all time.
Anders is going to ride or die for McClunky.
It's grown on me.
Exactly.
I mean, it's funny. I wish
the word is funny.
The word is very funny. I will give them that. I'm older than you guys, so I saw these when I was like 7 or 8 from the 1990 VHS copies that my brother still has. So yes, he still has a VCR, and we can watch them when we want. So we can see like kind of the original version, still like remastered for sound and stuff, but we get the good scenes.
So Colleen, just looking at your eyes whenever we bring up the 97 editions, let's get what are your thoughts on the ultimate edits, the additions that have been made to this over time?
It's a monstrosity, Anders. Some parts are fine. Like, yes, fix the effects if you want to. That's fine. But it was a masterpiece, George. Leave it alone. Like, you don't have to tweak your masterpiece every single time. Like, the editing has been done. Just stop. Han shoots first. I mean, first is relative because Greedo doesn't get to shoot when Han kills him. It makes him more of a compelling character. I know George didn't want him to come off as a bad guy, but he's not a quote-unquote nice man yet, George. This is fine. He should be the one that shoots first. And the Jabba scene is unforgivable. Jabba is like basically a Hutt nobleman. Like, he is high up on the Hutt ladder. He is a terrifying force in the galaxy. He would have killed Han for stepping on him, let alone talking to him that way. Like, no, he's not some like small-time gangster. He's a big deal.
I mean, I'll definitely give you the step on the tail. Like, that is a little ridiculous. I do credit the special editions with starting my love for special features on things, because I had the special edition VHSs and they had those like 10-minute featurettes before each one that would describe the changes, and you got to see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. And I mean, I can understand their thinking when they figured out that Han walks behind Jabba, and when they had originally shot the scene, Jabba wasn't a slug yet, so they had to come up with something.
Right.
But I agree, that particular thing is silly. Other than that, I don't really have a problem with that scene. I think it's a fine scene to put Jabba the Hutt there.
I don't think Jabba would go there. From what he's established later on, I don't think he would go there. He sends flunkies. He doesn't go. So that just doesn't fit.
You make a good point there. From what we see of Jabba in Return of the Jedi, he just does not seem like the kind of guy who's, I'm going to go leave my palace with my cadre of hired goons to go talk to one smuggler. It feels so separate from the Jabba that we get in episode 6. I didn't see that scene until about 2 years ago, because I had never seen that until, so that scene is very new to me, and it's very confusing for me.
Confusing. Harrison Ford looks great. I mean, there's nothing wrong.
Always.
And seeing Boba Fett is cool. Like, oh, he's there. Like, this is fun to see that he's already established as one of Jabba's guys. But they should have had Bib Fortuna be there instead.
That would be cool.
That would have been good. I love Bib Fortuna.
And Han could totally have like shoulder crushed, like pushed him out of the way, and that would have been fine.
That would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd say for the most part, the edits in the special edition don't bother me. Watching it over the weekend for the rewatch on Disney Plus was one of the first times that I have like a full watch through of it, and I'm like, okay, these look pretty good. Like especially the X-wings coming around Yavin, that looks amazing. The kind of the stuff that bothered me, the one big one that stands out besides Jabba is when they're coming into Mos Eisley in the speeder, and it just. You got someone messing with his mount, the little reptilian, long-necked giraffe-looking thing.
Yeah.
That's a little goofy. Everything else,
cheesy.
I'm like, this isn't too bad.
Yeah, I remember that scene from the original re-release where they just added kind of the wide shot and they had populated it kind of for the first time. And then when I saw it this time, I realized how much they had actually added even after that. They've added stuff in the last like year to more populate that background. So yes, Han shot first. Ultimately, I don't really care about whether or not Han shot first. I care about the fact that when they made that change to make Greedo shoot first, it just looked clunky.
It looks really bad.
That freeze frame of Han, you can just tell that there's something going on there. And then when they smoothed it out a little bit, but then when they even added McClunky, again, I'm ride or die for the word, but like it just makes it feel more rushed and weird, and the energy for the whole thing just kind of gets weird for me.
Right. It doesn't gel. I mean, I love that they added the Biggs scenes later because Biggs Darklighter is awesome. And I wanted to see his relationship with Luke because when they're fighting, it's obviously know each other.
Yeah.
And then having that little extra background was cool. And then to know that this is like Luke's best friend, for real best friend, and he is there when he dies. It's just like, so that addition I liked. I liked that.
Though Luke does not have much of a reaction to that at all.
I think he's adrenaline high at that point.
Fair enough. He's in the moment. He's getting ready. He's connecting to the
Although
Force.
We'll talk about those moments a little bit later.
Yes.
So we've kind of talked about how we've seen different versions of the movie, but how is this is one of the most beloved movies in the world of all time. It's one of the most iconic things out there. So, Daniel, how's your relationship with this movie kind of evolved over time from seeing it when you were so little to now?
So I saw all of them when I was 6 years old, back to back to back. And so I've grown up with just all of them continuously. And I got to say, it's probably my least rewatched. And when I say it's my least favorite of the original trilogy, I'm saying that by such fine margins with all of them. Like, I absolutely love them. But I think some of the Luke Vader relationships in the later movies are more compelling to me than what we get in this one. So I say it's my least favorite of the original trilogy, but it's like an old sweater that you still love to put on. Like, it's very comfortable. It makes me feel good just to sit down and watch it. Yeah, so I absolutely love it, but it's got my least favorite lightsaber scene of all of them. I'm sorry, Obi-Wan and Vader.
And that's so hard because Alec Guinness actually could fight.
Oh, he could.
With the sword.
Which is a shame.
I was surprised on my rewatch this time actually at how much better that fight was than I was thinking. I hadn't watched this movie like you all the way through in a little while. And I was surprised at actually the amount of energy that they did have in that scene. I remember it being this kind of like slow, and obviously we can compare it to the stuff that we get in later movies with much younger people who aren't robots. Right. Yeah, actually, Obi-Wan started reminding me. I used to fence when I was for a couple of years in high school, and I would go to these rec center open fencing thing. You just show up, basically challenge somebody to practice or whatever. And there would be like these 90-year-old men there who, if you see them walking in the grocery store, they're like shaking as they get a can of beans down, but you put a foil in their hands and their reflexes are lightning, and they're just like, and it's
like, oh
crazy.
Crap.
Yeah. So I actually got kind of that vibe out of that duel. And I'll say this, they still had more energy than Mace and the Emperor do in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, we're going to get into Revenge of the Sith later. And Mace, y'all. We are going to get into Mace later.
Another episode. But Colleen, what about you, your relationship with this movie?
Yes. Daniel had mentioned in our outline too about the opening sequence, which is fantastic. Yes. Amazing. Captain Antilles does not get enough kudos from the fandom for this scene. He makes sure that Leia is able to get those plans off the ship. Like, well done, Captain Antilles. We love you. We wish that Vader hadn't crushed you. This is my second favorite for the original trilogy, mainly because it does such a great job of setting up the characters and the story. There's so many great one-liners. I mean, Harrison Ford is on fire in this movie. Carrie Fisher is on fire in this movie.
Always.
I was afraid of these movies, though, when I was little. My brother and I would watch them, and I like scary movies, so I would watch them, but it freaked me out. The cantina scene at first freaked me out, even though I love it now. I love spending time with the crew. Like Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher have that electric chemistry immediately, which I appreciate more now that I'm older. When I was younger, I'm like, oh, yay! These people are fun. And now I'm like, those people are going to go have sex later. Like, for sure. They look great. And I found that I also put a lot more emotions on these characters and their arcs in this movie. Like, we know now that Vader was Anakin, who lived on Tatooine. Vader being this near Tatooine is probably sending off all kinds of crazy dark side vibes. The Emperor is probably laughing back on Coruscant. He's like, oh, Anakin's having a hissy fit over Tatooine again. This is great.
Oh, that jerk. You know he would.
He totally would. He's just sitting there laughing. And then, of course, we find out later that Leia is his daughter, so he is torturing his daughter. But it's nice to know that Leia, with the Force, has enough fortitude to be able to resist every form of torture, even Vader's Force mind invasion, I would assume. It's like,
no.
Yay, Leia.
I want to talk about Leia for a second, because I forgot how fierce she is off the bat. I love it. And I found out a little fact right before recording that makes me laugh even more is we see Leia with a British accent in exactly one scene. Yeah. So when Tarkin goes to interrogate her, she's got the British accent. Yes. And in the real world, they were thinking, it's the first day of shooting. Let's try it. It didn't work. And they move on. But in one of the books, I forgot which one it was, they explain that she puts on the accent to make fun of Tarkin.
Yes.
I'm like, that is amazing. Yes. That is absolutely amazing.
Her diplomacy tactics coming through. She's such a dick. I love it.
Yeah.
And you can tell Tarkin too. Like, she's this tiny little 19-year-old girl, and she is schooling Vader and Tarkin in this scene. I love it so amazing. Much. How about you, Anders?
From us.
How are you? How's your relationship with the movie now?
It's kind of hard for me to say because it's very hard for me to separate this out as a single movie. It's my second favorite of the original trilogy. It's my fourth favorite overall in the entire canon. And everything about it just has such a high regard in my mind. It does everything you were saying, Colleen. It sets things up so well. And it's got this place in the cultural zeitgeist that I don't remember there ever being. Well, it's because there really was not. I've never been alive without Star Wars being in existence. So I guess my relationship with the franchise has grown so much over time. And I think I have finally evolved into the Star Wars nerd that my family always kind of thought I was.
Right. You're like, oh, I liked it. I always liked it. But now I'm like, I ride or die now for this.
Yeah. And being able to connect to different properties that have come out, Watch Rebels.
Watch Rebels. Our plug to Watch Rebels.
But getting back into some of the things in the movie itself, I mean, I think we've kind of said everything about this movie is just really cool. It's just incredible. Is there any particular favorite things you guys wanted to give a shout out to, Daniel?
So I want to shout out TIE Fighter sounds. Just absolutely iconic. That screeching sound as they go roaring past. And Vader's TIE Fighter specifically with its like slightly different sound to it. Just so menacing. That was one of like the things that stood with me as a kid. I used to build Lego starships of my own, and I would make them make the TIE Fighter sound. Like, it was just iconic.
It's fantastic. Of course, Drama King himself has a special ship.
Oh, of course.
It's got to be special. Our poor Vader.
Look, if he can't do dramatic things with his ship, then what is he doing?
Exactly. Nothing. If it doesn't have a foothold, so you can go down into a Sith temple standing on top of it.
That is one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars.
It makes no sense, but okay.
It's so dramatic, and it's the best. It's the best thing he can.
But anyway, back to New Hope. We have to stay on topic, otherwise we'll end up talking for 6 hours.
I love the Falcon. I love its design. It looks like a traditional flying saucer, but then with some oomph. Like, George saw the mock-up of it and was like, I like that. Let's go farther. Like, yes, please. And I just love the Han Leia relationship. I love it. I know that George didn't really know where he was going with their kind of storyline, but it's there. It's so there. I don't know if it would have happened if Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher hadn't had that level of chemistry. But it works out really well in the end with them.
I mean,
especially when we will get to our next movie. But this one was just like, the dialogue is really good. And I know Harrison Ford likes to fiddle with the dialogue, which makes good sense because sometimes the dialogue can get a little clunky. But they do such a good job with what they're given.
Harrison Ford could have pulled off I Don't Like Sand.
He could have. He could have. With his face looking like that, yes. I mean, and that V cut. That V cut is.
Ooh. Yeah. Yes. Oh, and I love Chewbacca introducing the Wookiees. I mean, this is kind of an issue later with the alien designs. Like the cuddly looking aliens are the good ones, and the bugs or the reptiles are the kind of evil looking ones are the bad guys.
Yes.
But seeing Chewbacca and knowing that there's a person in there being him was fantastic. I love Peter Mayhew. Give all the shouts to Peter Mayhew.
I just love Wookiees in general. They're so fantastic.
I mean, but if we're talking about character chemistry, I just got to give a shout out to C-3PO and R2-D2. They are the old married couple that we all want to be when we grow up.
Laurel and Hardy, for sure.
They are so good. The banter back and forth, it really hit me actually on this rewatch. The way that C-3PO describes R2-D2 at various points in the story, like they're in the desert and he's a scrap pile, and then he might have a chance to get bought by Luke. Oh, he's a real bargain. He's great. He runs away. Oh yeah, he's always been a problem.
Yes. So fantastic. He's like, oh, he excels at that, sir. I'm like, you just told him that he was an awesome droid. What a liar. I love it. Get it through you.
All in the span of about 6 hours. And talking about like spaceships, I'm actually going to pull a Colleen here and I'm going to make a Rebel shout out because one of the things I did notice on this rewatch, one of the ships that has been added kind of in the background in several scenes was one of those Imperial shuttles. Now we saw those a lot in Return of the Jedi, that shuttle Tidarian that takes them down to Endor. That's a Lambda class. But in Mos Eisley, we do see a few Sentinel class shuttles, which are very prominently featured in Rebels. And I love those.
I missed that.
I think he's playing with like a Lambda shuttle model too, isn't he, Luke, when he's doing his little flying?
I think that's, I'm not sure if that's a Lambda shuttle or if that's his T-16.
Okay.
That might be his T-16.
Because it looks very similar to
because I think I had a friend who had one of those, who had like a Model T-16 when we were younger, and it like popped open so you could put your Luke figure in, and it was awesome.
Sweet.
Merch.
Yes, the original merch.
So much merch.
So much merch. But Daniel, you were saying though early before we jumped on, you were saying one of your favorite aliens has actually been cut.
Yes, unfortunately, they cut him out of the special editions, which is a crime. Colleen, speaking of being creeped out by the cantina scene, this guy creeped me out of the cantina scene. His name is, and I'm sorry to the Star Wars fans, I know I'm going to mispronounce this and someone will come
That's
for me.
okay.
Arleal Schaus. He's the red-eyed wolf man that in the regular editions, before the special ones, he's just sitting in the corner and they pan over to him and he's got these big red piercing eyes and he's like kind of in shadow, but you can tell this man came straight out of like the 1940s Lon Chaney Jr. movies. And,
I think that's where it's from because I think the costume designer had to use older masks.
That's amazing.
In order to fill the cantina scene. So that's probably why he's there and then why they cut it.
I mean, but that is such a shame to me because I love that wolf man. He's so cool. And then there's also, if you guys have ever seen real quick, the 2003 Clone Wars animated series, which is non-canon now. There is a Wolfman
Jedi.
Jedi.
One.
Yes, there's a Wolfman Jedi in that, and it made me so happy.
I actually remember noticing that guy got cut. I love all the aliens in there. Actually, if we're gonna talk the Cantina though, I gotta give a shout out to the Cantina band, who like everyone knows the Death Star, everyone knows Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, but the Cantina band is probably the most low key, iconic thing to come out of this movie.
Oh yeah.
Like one of the most
Yes.
parodied things.
The modal nodes.
Everyone knows that tone that they play.
Play that same song.
Yes. They're the Bith. That's the species, the Bith. They look so much like just the traditional alien kind of image that we have with the giant head and the big eyes.
Yes.
And then they're just a hella good band that got stuck on Tatooine because one of the leader of the band owed Jabba money. So
they'd eventually get to play for B. Arthur. It's fine.
Yes. That is what we all aspire to, is to play our music for B. Arthur.
They really just made the dream right there. Good for them.
Exactly.
Oh, my favorite alien is the trash compactor monster, which is a Dianoga named Omi, because she has a name. And she's force sensitive. We find this out later, not in this movie.
Okay, this is the first time actually hearing about this. Why is she there?
They captured her and put her down there. I think she's like a cleaner situation. I can't remember exactly from the short story, because she doesn't know why she's there. She's captured, put in this trash compactor, and she's like, I'm force sensitive. What the shit is going on here?
I feel so bad that I've slandered her name then without ever knowing that she had one.
She basically, at least in the short story from the book I will plug later, she is baptizing Luke because she can feel his force sensitivity. So she's like trying to make him more, his force sensitivity come out more or something. Yeah.
Trying to drive up the adrenaline to get the juices flowing.
Yeah. It's a really interesting short story. That's one of my favorites
Omi.
from the book. Yeah.
All right.
Omi can get it. Like, get after it, Omi. She's great. I love it.
I love her now, and I'm so sorry that I was ever mean about her.
We're all mean about her. She tried to kill Luke, or at least that's what we thought was happening.
The tentacle monster is trying to drown him.
And she did scare me as a kid.
Oh yeah, completely. The little periscope eye shot up, and I was like, "What is that?"
Yeah,
unacceptable. Things in the water, unacceptable. No.
All right, so moving on a little bit. What in this movie do you guys think? What is untouchable? Things that are absolutely perfect, and then we've talked a lot about some of the changes, but is there anything that you guys think in this movie just on its own just doesn't really work?
So I'm gonna recant what I actually wrote in our script.
Oh my!
I had put unbearable in quotation marks because I love the R2D2 3CPO. I love their Tatooine adventure. I just thought it went on a little too long, and then on this rewatch, I was like, "Oh my god, this is fantastic!"
Yes.
I think as a kid, I was always a little impatient. I was like, let me get to Luke, let me get to the story. And now as an adult, I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, they're amazing. I just love them going back and forth. So I had put that as my unbearable, but that is with a huge grain of salt. I mean, yeah, maybe it goes on a little too long for my taste. But if that's the most unbearable thing for me in this movie, then that's a pretty good sign.
Right. It's pretty much perfect. It's a wonderful movie. Anders, how about you?
So for me, I'm gonna say the opening for me is just absolutely untouchable. Everything about it, starting with the opening crawl, moving into the Star Destroyer flying overhead. I don't know if there's a single image in my mind that's more closely associated with a movie and with excitement, especially knowing what we know now about Rogue One and what was happening right before that. Being in the middle of the battle, seeing the stormtroopers for the first and only time have good aim, Darth Vader strutting out of that steam hallway, everything just puts you right in the middle of everything. Even the, don't shoot at the pod because there's no life forms aboard.
Yeah.
Everything flows well. And I think actually, so as I've gotten a little bit older and I consume an absolutely obscene amount of content, movies, TV shows, books, podcasts, whatever, I tell myself I'm a film buff and I can talk intelligently about movies. The pacing in this movie is so good. It doesn't skip a beat. Everything flows really well into itself, into the next piece. It's so good. My one unbearable that I really just noticed on this last rewatch, it's not even unbearable, but I do want to raise the question. It's funny, it's played for laughs. Leia, love her. Badass general, senator, Alderaan princess, Alderaan, a very much humanitarian aid planet fighting against injustice, fighting against speciesism, racism, part of the rebellion that is actively trying to free the Wookiees because they are enslaved on Kashyyyk. Not to diminish the trauma that she had just been through with the aforementioned torture, but would she really actually call Chewbacca a big walking carpet? Implying that she would in fact have a Wookiee carpet at her house.
I would sure hope not.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
believe that she wouldn't.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna chalk it up to being 19 and in the middle of a gunfight and finding out that your rescuers are kind of dumb.
Yeah.
In the best way.
Good Lord, this is the rescue party.
She's like, "Oh my God, I'm the brains of my own rescue." So I'll give her the pass on that because she's very nice to Chewbacca, bar not giving him a medal.
Yeah, that's another unbearable
Yeah.
that Chewbacca doesn't get a medal.
He
Even if
does
his people don't like medals, like, no, give him a freaking medal.
Give him a nice potted plant or something. I don't know, something that would be meaningful to him.
Give him a badge on the gun.
Yeah,
The gun
yeah.
bells.
Give him some more like charges for his bowcaster. Give him
some
something.
fun ammunition, some explosives.
Mhm.
Turn that bowcaster into like a Green Arrow type thing.
Yes,
Some fun
exactly.
energy blast.
Yes.
Exactly. Oh, poor Chewie. We love you. We love you, Chewie. For me, perfection is Harrison Ford basically doing anything, standing there, talking, swaggering. He can do anything. I love him in this role. He is
Yes.
Han Solo.
Mhm.
We'll talk about Solo later at the movie, but Harrison Ford just is ridiculously good in this movie. And he was not supposed to be cast in this role. It was almost an accident that it happened. George just liked how he acted. So he's like, oh, yeah, this guy reading the lines, he's Han Solo. Let's bring him on. Peter Cushing is
Yes.
fantastic.
Oh
He's
my God.
incredible.
Oh, perfectly cast as Grand Moff Tarkin, that stringy evil vulture man. Oh, I hate
He's so
Tarkin.
much scarier than I
He
remembered.
is so scary. Tarkin is terrifying. Like, he's the actual villain of the story. Vader is on the quote unquote leash,
Yeah.
and he outranks Vader here. They're kind of on level playing ground with the Emperor.
Vader
They're
doesn't
kinda
really have a rank.
no.
Vader
he's
exists
just-
outside the military
Yeah.
structure.
He just
So he's
is.
just there.
Mm-hmm.
And Tarkin is he's willing to kill billions of people.
The scene where he says, "You know what? Give me the rebel base. We won't shoot your planet." She's like, "All right, fine. It's Dantooine." And he's like, "Okay, blow up." Just so does not care, and it's amazing. He I don't know why he didn't scare me as much as a kid, but as an adult, I'm like, "Oh God, this is you're the real evil one in the room."
Mm-hmm.
Because Vader looks scarier.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, you see this giant man in a black helmet, and you're like, well, that's the one I need to be afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you get older, you're like, oh no, the genocidal maniac is actually the one I need to be afraid of.
Yeah, he might be a bad man.
Yeah, he's a bad
Possible.
dude. He's never been good. I haven't read the
ultimately
Tarkin book
taken-
yet, but
I haven't either. It's on my list. And ultimately taken down by his arrogance.
yes.
That moment hits a lot harder for me now as adults.
Evacuate in a moment of triumph.
You know what? I'm happy for the arrogance in that moment.
Yes.
I am too. Especially when
Yes.
when I compare it to like a lot of moments again in other properties, like at the first sign of trouble, General Grievous pieces out on his own little
He's
ship.
out.
He's always fleeing the scene, and Tarkin is just like, nope. This
Yeah,
is
now
Tarkin
not.
I'm
goes down with the
staying.
ship.
He does. I mean, at least he does that, I guess. But no, you also taking millions of people with you with the Death Star. Like, for real. If he had called for an evacuation order, people could have lived. But instead, he's like, no, everything's fine. Nothing's wrong, guys. We've got this under control.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Now,
fine.
while we're talking about the Death Star blowing up, I just want to circle back real quick to that Marcia Lucas documentary where they were talking about adding in stuff to the ending. Originally, they were just going to have the attack run on the Death Star just be an attack run that they're doing. So there's no Death Star showing up on Yavin 4. There's no stakes, really. So it would have just been the rebels going and doing a terrorism real quick and then piecing out. And so I kind of like, I'm very glad that they put that in where it's like, okay, there's stakes. We really have to do this now or never.
Yeah.
Sorry to the millions of stormtroopers.
There
you probably weren't all bad
I'm
guys.
more worried about the personnel that don't know what's going on. I mean, that doesn't come up until later when we're concerned about people in the Empire.
Like, sorry, y'all, but we did have to blow you up in that moment because it was life or death.
Yes. Yeah, in this moment, we were like, these are the bad guys. Like, everyone on here is a bad guy. And your kid brain doesn't really calculate how many people it would take to run this thing.
Mm-hmm.
When you find out there are millions of people on board, I mean, there's probably a cafe runner. He doesn't know what the hell is going on. He just makes the calf.
It's true.
And he gets exploded. Omi gets exploded. The trash compactor monster.
Oh
no. Omi doesn't. No.
I know.
I didn't think of that until just now. I'm sorry,
Omi.
Omi.
Gets exploded.
Colleen, why did you give her a name?
I didn't. I did not give her.
Sad now.
Talking about the attack on the Death Star, I did notice one thing that, again, the pacing, the tension in this moment is incredible. The way that the cuts are going back and forth between the base and the fighters and everything. One thing I did kind of wonder about, though, this time around, there are a couple of attack runs made. They're down in the trench. They're doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Before they start the attack runs, there's TIE fighters everywhere. We hear the lasers happening. Justice for Porkins.
His ship malfunctions. That's not his fault.
I know. But we say goodbye to Biggs. It all goes down. While they're making the attack runs, though, every time they cut back up to the other X-wings, they're not fighting anymore. They are literally just like holding back, flying around, doing nothing. So they see Vader and those two TIEs come in, get in the trench right behind them, gun down their friends, and like don't go in behind Vader and try and take him out. It takes Han coming in at the last second to do that.
I guess they were just running like blocks for everyone, but
yeah,
I feel like there's more efficient starfighter techniques you could have used.
Yeah, there's just not enough of them. I mean, there's only 30 of them.
Yeah,
compared to however many TIEs were on the Death Star.
Probably.
But it does seem like it's like, why weren't you helping? But I think at that point when Vader attacks, there are not very many left either. Wedge's ship gets taken out, so he can't help. I think Verlaine, who's flying the Y-Wing, is busy doing something else. So because there's only 3 at the end, it's Luke, Wedge, and the Y-Wing, who we later find out is Verlaine. But there's just not enough ships, and Vader's too fast. I mean, even if they took out his escort, they wouldn't have been able to take him out. Han really gets the drop on him.
We say Vader's too fast, but I have noticed Vader will blow someone up, and then they cut to Luke flying, and they cut to Vader still like coming up, and then it's like they go, and then he's still coming up, and then they go, and then he's still coming up.
Yeah.
It reminds me, have you guys ever seen the movie Kung Pao?
Yes.
When he's like running towards the village, and then they cut to everyone watching, and then they cut back, and he's still like even farther away than he was.
Yes.
It's like that.
It's like that. It's like Monty Python and the Holy Grail. If you've ever seen that, exactly. Lancelot running up the hill.
Yes. The only thing I can think of with Vader is that he's distracted because he can feel this presence in the Force.
That's true.
But that's hindsight, because we're knowing now that this is his son. It's probably some sort of weird reverberation through the Force. Plus, Obi-Wan's talking through the Force, so he can probably feel that too. So he's not quite on his game once he gets down to Luke either.
That's a good point, because he does bring up, he's like, oh, this one is strong in the Force.
Right.
And he probably was going through all sorts of stuff, realizing what was going on.
Mm-hmm. And Obi-Wan disappearing is weird.
Yes.
Because he's never seen that. He doesn't know really about the Force ghosts. I mean, the Mortis arc
neither do we at this point.
Yeah, we did.
Watching this movie for the first time, we don't know that. And that's actually something that really jumped out to me as learned more about Star Wars, the lore, everything around behind it. This initial movie, while they do talk about the Force, obviously they introduce it as a concept, they don't give us that much about it. This movie in particular, considering what it spawns, is very, very light on details.
Yes, very much.
Like we get what's the initial explanation from Obi-Wan? I don't want to butcher the quote. Colleen, you probably know it better than I do.
The Force is what gives a Jedi his power. It's an energy field that connects all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together. Something like that.
Yeah, that's a pretty generic explanation of this thing that
Yeah.
supposedly gives you power. I mean,
Superpowers.
superpowers, and we don't get that many of those superpowers here, considering all the things that if you've watched all of the films, if you've seen Clone Wars, if you've seen Rebels, if you've read some of the books, some of the things that you know that it can do, we don't get that many things here. I mean,
No. They have magic swords.
they have the magic swords, but those aren't, I mean, at least in the initial explanation, those aren't force driven. Yes,
Right.
kyber crystals and everything about it. But I mean, in terms of actively using the force, we get the mind trick on the stormtroopers.
Yep.
And all we really get as an explanation about that is that the force can have an effect on the weak-minded.
Right.
It's then Vader does this force choke,
Uh-huh.
that initial force choke, giving us a little
Terrifying.
bit of that, kind of telekinesis vibe, but not really a direct thing that this is something the force can do.
Mhm.
And other than that, it's like an instinct. Using the force is like an instinct.
Yeah.
You have a gut feeling about something.
Yeah. With the blast shield down, how am I supposed to hit anything?
And the
I
actual
love you,
really
Luke.
do like
I do
the
love you,
scene.
Luke.
Oh, I love Luke. I do love the scene where he has to put the helmet on and he's blocking the bolts from the
Yes.
training drone.
that is a great scene.
Yes.
It's just a fantastic scene with Han not believing in the Force in that moment and Luke showing his little, growing inclinations of it.
Mhm.
It's fantastic.
And in that
I mean,
scene,
it's
they
been dormant.
it's been dormant, and they are planting seeds for things that will be used later on, like light side and dark side of the Force. Like in that scene, Obi-Wan is telling Luke, you feel the Force flowing through you.
Yeah.
It's this thing that you kind of have to trust in the Force.
Mhm.
That's the light side. And then on the opposite side, you have Vader, who is using it to dominate. He is actively manipulating things. He is making the Force bend to his will instead of surrendering to
Right.
it.
And that's such a good dichotomy between the two. Because
Mhm.
because we don't know, of course, that Vader is Anakin. We don't know that Obi-Wan has this really intense relationship with Vader, even though he says, oh, he was a pupil of mine. It's like, well, that could mean anything. Like,
From a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view, everything's fine. I like that they don't spell out everything right away. And I think that's one of the strengths
too.
of Star Wars, because they don't give us a lot about the Force. You're just supposed to immediately believe in it and be
But
like,
I think
okay.
that that's something that would surprise a lot of fans. Like if you are a major Star Wars fan and you're deep into the Force lore, to go back and watch this and realize how little was actually there at the start and how it's all implied. It's all these little seeds that they're planting. I think is just like you said, it's a very brilliant decision. It's a great choice.
Yep. That's a good storytelling decision, especially, although props to Lucas for being like, I'm not going to tell you everything, even though I might only get one movie. Like, dang.
Yeah, we get enough understanding in this movie where if that's all we got was just one Star Wars movie, okay, you understand the Force. It's a mystical thing. Yeah. And then I like that it's open, that you can keep expanding.
Yes.
And I
also like that they refer to it as a religion.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like the two ways that Obi-Wan and Darth Vader talk about it, though, because Obi-Wan puts it in these terms of how the Force flows through you, these nice, like, peaceful ways. And Vader talks about its power and, like, how people should be afraid of the Force. And, like, it's no match. The Death Star is no match to the power of the Force.
Right. And he is afraid. Vader's afraid of everything, which doesn't come across necessarily in this movie, but it will later on. His fear is ultimately his downfall.
It's true.
Which is brilliant. Like, we'll talk about this with the prequels and Anakin's development there, but the seeds were laid here for him to be afraid and for him not to be the big bad. People are like, well, Vader's just a flunky. It's like, yeah, he is. Like, he's scary looking. He's very powerful, but he doesn't have an MO. He doesn't have a reason really for doing anything except to listen to the Emperor or Tarkin here, which is interesting for a villain because we're used to them being the big bad immediately. and he's
Right.
just not.
And then the one other seed they do plant here, Colleen, you mentioned it, Obi-Wan's disappearance upon death. We don't really know what's going on. We know that he is somehow more powerful than Vader could possibly imagine. And he does come back. He gets the voiceover later during the Death Star run, which kind of plants the seed for later developments in further movies.
Yes.
But
good job, intimidation, Obi-Wan. Because Vader's like, what?
sassy to the end.
What?
Yeah, what? I love that scene.
That's a great.
Oh man. Before we move on to the recommendations, so I do have to bring up, this was my unbearable, was Luke's reaction. Luke's reactions for a lot of things are a little skewed awkwardly. Like his reaction to his aunt and uncle dying. He sees their literal skeletons burning up on the Tatooine desert.
Horrifying.
And
that was a horrifying scene as a child.
It was, yeah, that terrified me. That is the scariest thing I have seen, and besides when we get to the Rancor eating people in Return of the Jedi, who also has a name and is a girl. We'll get to that in Return of the Jedi. But these burned up corpses is terrifying, and yet Luke's reaction to their death is way more subdued than his reaction when Obi-Wan dies.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, yes, you've known him as crazy old Ben living out in the desert for your entire life.
Experienced a lot more. I mean, if we're talking about quote unquote getting something out of life, he's experienced a lot more with Obi-Wan in the last few days.
I mean,
I am in no way slandering Ben and Beru. They were doing their job. They were doing their job.
She's a great mom.
She was she was a great mom, but they kept him. I mean, all he really knew was the day life on the farm.
Yes.
And he was knowing that he was meant for something greater. Exactly. I'm not blaming them for that, but Luke had a much more intense life experience over the span of a few days than he probably did in his entire life on Tatooine.
I mean, still, though, 19 years with your aunt and uncle, you'd hope they'd have a little bit more of a reaction than, oh, we're going to Mos Eisley, we're getting out of here? Okay.
Yeah. If he had fallen to his knees, like, all he had to do was fall to his knees.
Fair. Definitely.
And I would have been like, okay, here we go.
And then it would have been perfect.
I would actually
it would have been like poetry. It would have rhymed with episode 2.
He does kind of have a mindset towards getting vengeance. It's not spelled out in any means, but he like gets that steely look in his eye, and he's like, I want to go with you. I want to learn how to be a Jedi. Let's get these guys.
Planting the little seeds of possibly how his future could go if he doesn't do things
potentially.
Right.
So I think that is it to wrap up our discussion on this movie. You guys have any last thoughts?
No, other than
so good. The music. I mean, we should shout out John Williams.
Absolutely. We have to shout out John Williams. The score.
Composer god that he is.
Yes.
The score is just fantastic.
That binary sunset.
Oh,
the binary sunset, yes.
Luke just standing there it's perfection. Absolute perfection.
We mentioned the medal ceremony earlier. We actually at my high school, the exit song from graduation was the scene was the score from that scene. Like they did the traditional graduation coming in, but it was the Star Wars theme on your way out.
I'm here for that. Oh,
that's amazing.
I'm so here for that.
I would have been living.
We tried to push them to change it to the Imperial March, but they wouldn't let us.
Which we don't get here.
We don't.
We do not get that yet. John Williams has yet to cook that bad boy up. We will get to that soon, though.
All right. So lastly today, we have a few recommendations for you guys. These are stories both in Star Wars canon and outside of it that if you like this initial Star Wars movie, we think you'll enjoy. I'm going to kick us off by plugging one of my favorite young adult book series. It's called The Lost Years of Merlin by T.A. Barron. It is a series that shows the quote-unquote lost teenage years of the wizard Merlin and his adventures on the magical island of, I've never actually been sure if it's Fincaira or Fincaira, but it all takes place before he becomes a part of that Arthurian legend. It draws heavily from Celtic mythology and tells the story of a young boy who discovers his great power and his great destiny. Merlin, in this sense, he acts as a really, really good Luke parallel, even more so as the story evolves, but no spoilers. And I'm pretty sure this is one of those like book series that the rights got snatched up at some point to make a movie or something, and it's been in developmental hell for like 10 years. Netflix or Disney Plus or whoever owns it, get up off your tails and make this a series. It is perfect for it. And then the one other thing I will absolutely plug. So my big COVID discovery has been Lego content. And so
Oh,
I am going to
yes.
plug Lego Star Wars The Freemaker Adventures. It is a show. It's available on Disney Plus. There's 2 seasons of it. I think you can find most of it on YouTube as well. It's a really nice little story about a young boy and his siblings and his kind of parallel journey through most of the original trilogy, discovering his Force sensitivity and his special connection with the Kyber crystals. Also, Lego Emperor is the funniest character ever.
Yes.
So
Yes. Lego Palpatine is the best, literally the best.
As a fan of Lego Star Wars, the video games, I'll have to jump into that then.
Oh my God, it's so good. His treatment of Vader is like Robot Chicken plus.
yeah,
Oh, that's
it's Robot
fantastic.
Chicken combined with The Office. It's great.
Yeah, it's so good.
Oh man.
All right, Daniel, how about you?
So I have 2. The first one I'm going to be real quick on because the second one I'm much more excited about right now. So The Inheritance Cycle is a book series by Christopher Paolini. He started it when he was like 15 years old, published it when he was like 17.
Yep.
So the writing gets better as he goes on because, obviously he grew as he was writing these. It is basically Star Wars in fantasy form. You've got a young boy who finds a dragon egg, and it leads him into this magical world. He's got this older mysterious mentor who takes him along the road. There's a princess at some point that he ends up meeting up with. So I don't want to say too much, but it's a 4-book series. I really enjoyed those. I read those when I was in high school, and I've got them sitting on my bookshelf. I might start a reread soon, actually. But the second one I wanted to talk about is my absolute favorite video game series. It's called Mass Effect. It's amazing. It's a science fiction series set in the late 2100s. So humanity at this point has been part of the galaxy for about 26 years, and they're trying to prove their worth. And you play as this person named Commander Shepard. You find this artifact that's telling you about this ancient doom coming from outside the galaxy, and nobody believes you. And you're trying to prove this across the series. It is fantastic. It's everything you want in sci-fi. There's amazing alien races. You get to go to all these amazing planets. There's these epic moments. It is also choose your own adventure type thing. You make decisions that affect the outcomes of the game. It's fantastic. And it is getting a remaster. The first game is 15 years old, and they are finally remastering it in 4K. And it's coming out on May 14th, my birthday, which is just it's the best.
Forces.
I am
unite.
so excited. It was the
That's so
perfect
awesome.
timing. It's probably my favorite sci-fi outside of Star Wars. So yeah, it's fantastic.
That's awesome. So Shepard is basically Thrawn.
You know what? If you want to be, because you can be either a paragon or a renegade, as they call it. So you can make, if you want to be the upstanding citizen in the galaxy, or do you want to be kind of a warlord going across? So you can do whatever you want.
Yes. People need to listen to Thrawn. There is an extragalactic threat coming, and nobody listens to him, and that's fine. We'll get to that at some point. I'm the resident Star Wars book pusher for this pod, and there's a lot of books that would complement this movie really well. Lost Stars, which I'm going to talk about in later pods because it covers a lot of the movies. For this one, though, definitely check out The Princess Diarist, which was written by Carrie Fisher. It's hysterical. She is so funny, so astute about her experiences. And a lot of it is about her filming this movie and her relationship with Harrison Ford, who was older than her and married.
Yeah.
But that's fine. And he has not
It's the
refuted the
70s.
book. So, yes. Yes. She was much younger, but kind of played off her, because it was the 70s, she played off the sexuality of herself as being much more experienced. And they actually have a really cool relationship coming out of these movies. Like, they're actually really good friends. And her and Mark Hamill are really good friends.
Oh, I love that.
And it's such a good book. She just is not afraid to tear herself down.
Oh, she
And
never,
also be
never
like,
was.
I'm a badass though too. Like, I may be a drug user, I may be into alcohol, I have my problems, but I'm still a badass. And it just goes so well with the Leia character from this movie. I love that book. Everybody read that book. And then we talked a little bit about this earlier. It is the short story collection From a Certain Point of View, which comes from an Obi-Wan line later. It's about minor characters from this movie. So this is why I know that the trash compactor monster has a name. Chalmun's Cantina gets a ton of cute side stories, which are great. The best ones, though, are from Brea and Bail Organa's POVs when freaking Alderaan is destroyed. It is devastating. Oh, yeah. I read that story and was
I don't know if I could handle that.
Because they don't know if she's alive. They don't know if Leia survived.
Oh,
so
that's sad.
It's really sad.
They didn't survive.
No, I mean, while their planet is being blown up, they're like, where's Leia? Is she dead?
Oh, especially with Bail's scene in Rogue One. That hits.
Yes, it is so compelling. And then all of the stories from the Rebel assault on the Death Star are amazing. One of them details kind of all the pilots that are involved in the Death Star run. It gives them like their kill counts, how good of pilots they are, and they are amazing. Like all these pilots are so good. And the ones that come out of it are the rookies, kind of, with Wedge and Luke. Yeah. And yes, I would definitely recommend that short story collection for sure.
And just before we go, I do want to recommend, I will always recommend that you check out the novelization of the film that we're talking about. Every single Star Wars film has a novel. The one for the original is written by George Lucas as well. The novels of the films are always really cool to dive into because you can see like some of the changes that they make to put things on screen. They make some serious cuts in later ones or some slight tweaks in logic that might have actually made more sense if you stuck with what you wrote in the book. But whatever. This one is a really good read. I love reading Star Wars books during the summertime because they're great beach reads.
Yep.
They're quick and they just give you a little bit more detail than you might have gotten on the movie. But that is where we will leave it today. Thank you for joining us. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, some other platform that I haven't heard of yet. Hit that subscribe button.
Smash it.
Yeah.
You can find us on the web at ForgottenEntertainment.com. And while you're there, check out all the offerings from the Forgotten Entertainment family. You can also find Colleen and I on Bohemian Geek Studies podcast, where we are currently diving into Star Wars Rebels. Watch Rebels.
Watch Rebels.
Woo.
Tune in again next time when we will get into Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back.
Cannot wait.
Star Wars movie.
Oh, yes.